Hello, this is the Talking Michigan Transportation Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Cranston. Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that touches many of us, but few of us really understand what goes on, and that's real estate acquisition for transportation projects. First, I'll be speaking with Teresa Vanis, who manages the real estate services section at MDOT. And then I'll be speaking with Mohammed El-Gharabi, a repeat visitor to the podcast. He's the senior project manager for the Gordie Howe International Bridge project and has had a great deal of experience dealing with property owners in the acquisition of land for various projects across the state, but most notably the Gordie Howe International Bridge going back several years. So again, today I'm with Teresa Vanis, who is the section manager for real estate at MDOT and has been involved in real estate acquisition for a number of years. And I wanted to talk with her today about just what goes on when it comes to negotiating and buying property for various infrastructure projects. I think a lot of people would be surprised, I know I have been, at how the law has evolved over the years, and the protections for property owners are strong. But even besides that, it isn't always about the law and the rules and the policies. It's about human beings dealing with other human beings and treating them with respect. And I've just been very impressed with everything that MDOT has done. So having said that, thank you, Teresa. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's start a little bit with your background and your career trajectory in this area.
Yeah, so I have been with MDOT full-time since 1990. I started out as a student assistant in actually the Office of Governmental Affairs in 1988 and worked there for 2 years. And then when I graduated from MSU, I took a full-time position in real estate and have held a number of positions in both our central office and some of our region offices. I've worked in the Metro Region office and the Grand Region office throughout my career at MDOT. So worked in the excess property area, the acquisition, relocation, local agency oversight area. I managed the excess property area for a year or so, and then most recently my position as the real estate services section manager. Lots of different experiences in real estate over the years at MDOT.
Yes, absolutely. And so you came in working in government affairs, so probably like me and a lot of people that were new to the department, you kind of vaguely knew that DOTs have to acquire land to do all the things that they do in terms of building infrastructure, but you probably just were overwhelmed by all that you learned in a short amount of time as you got into real estate. What do you think? What sticks with you that really kind of opened your eyes back then?
Well, I mean, most people are really surprised to hear that the Michigan Department of Transportation has a real estate area. It's very surprising, and I was too, and just learned when I came in all the different rules and regulations and things that MDOT has to follow when it goes into running the real estate area and how we acquire property and how we actually also dispose of property. So, and also through the years learning about, it's about the people as well. It's not just about, the projects and making our letting dates. Obviously, we need to do that and we need to acquire property in order to do so, but also knowing that we're dealing with people and how we deal with people and being kind of on the front line in real estate and having that be the interaction for people to know what the department and real estate is about.
So going back to the earliest days of government land acquisition and the stories that we hear, about the railroads in the 19th century and the way that they acquired property, and then looking at how things have evolved, just, I guess, talk about that and the history and how much better, I guess, and I think how much more respect we show for the people with whom we're negotiating.
Yeah, definitely. So we do a presentation that we call a Real Estate 101, and it's an opportunity to give people in the department the chance to learn about real estate and how we do it. And one of the slides that I show is, a picture of a house with a big hand over it. And, that's a lot of times the perception that people have, that, we're the big bad government and we're coming in and we're just gonna, take their property and there's really no recourse for them. And I think that's probably, obviously I wasn't around back then with the railroads, but I think that's how things were done at the time. But, people don't realize, and MDOT, the real estate folks, especially in the regions, do a really good job of explaining the process and explaining that real estate, there's certain laws and regulations that we have to follow. So, I mean, it really comes down to, at the very beginning, the Constitution. In the Bill of Rights, it specifically states that, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the process of due law. So right there, it talks about we can't just take property because we want to. And then it also talks about in the Constitution that no private property can be taken without just compensation. So again, we have to make sure that a property owner is compensated for. So in my mind, that the Constitution is kind of the framework for how and what we do our jobs. And then there's also federal and state laws that we have to follow. And the federal law, it's what we follow is called, and it's a mouthful, so I'll say it all, but it's called the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act of 1970. So a huge mouthful. It was enacted in 1970, and we commonly refer to it at MDOT as either the Uniform Act or the URA. That regulation was put into effect. It's something that we have to follow anytime we have a project that has federal funds. And it basically is making sure that we're providing fair and equitable treatment to all people displaced on a project. So the big thing is the uniform, making sure that everyone is treated uniformly. We can't just say, well, we like this group of people better, so we're going to do this, and we like this group of people, so we're going to do that. It's making sure that, it's establishing that uniformity and equitable treatment of property owners on a project. We also have our state law. So, and that is the Uniform Condemnation Procedures Act. And so that's another law that we have to follow, that just provides what the procedures are when we're acquiring property under the threat of eminent domain.
So yeah, I was going to talk about the Michigan Act of 1980, which I guess dovetails with the Federal Act of 1970, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So what does just compensation mean? I was involved often early on as we were acquiring property for the Gordie Howe National Bridge and dealt with a number of residents and homeowners in that neighborhood. So talk about the policies and just what just compensation means.
So basically, before we acquire a property right, when we go out there and we have a project and we determine we need to acquire either a permanent property right or an easement or even a temporary property right, basically we're required to determine what just compensation is. And so that's basically looking at the property and determining through either an appraisal and an appraisal review or some type of market study or valuation analysis what that value of the property is. And so prior to acquiring that or making a written good faith offer is what we typically call it, we have to determine what that just compensation is. And so it is basically based on that appraisal or that market study, determining what the property is valued at for the use that we need it for.
Do you find that people are surprised, not only maybe the property owners, but even when you talk to family and friends about what you do, and those terms sound so ominous: eminent domain, condemnation. Going to your point earlier, it really does sound like the big hand of government is going to come in and take your property, and you don't have any say in the matter. So what have you found in terms of when you start to explain to people how they react?
So obviously it depends on the individual and who you're dealing with, but for the most part, I think people are very nervous initially when they get a call or they hear from MDOT or they hear that a project's coming. And so it's our job to, explain the situation, explain the project, explain how it's going to impact them, and then also explain, all the jargon and terminology we use. Obviously, yes, eminent domain or condemnation sounds awful, but typically especially for residential property owners, when they understand the benefits and the what they may be eligible for in addition to the just compensation if they're going to be relocated for a project, some of the relocation benefits that they're eligible for and what happens. Typically, what we found is they're a lot happier after. Initially they might not be, but usually once we work with them, the acquisition agent and the relocation agent explaining the processes and really just kind of treating them as people, understanding that, they have questions and they might ask the same question several times, but, we're used to dealing with this terminology. We're used to what we do. And so we really have to explain to them and make sure that they're comfortable with the process and answer any questions they may have.
Yeah, it takes tremendous patience. And later, I'm going to be talking to Mohammed El Garabi, the senior project manager on the Gordie Howe, about that more specifically, the relationship building that goes on ahead of a big project like that. I mean, following the NEPA process and all the other things that MDOT and DOTs, need to do, for a while there, for a few years, most of the work at MDOT was just kind of fixing things, repaving, resurfacing. There weren't a lot of projects given the ongoing, financial struggles and underfunding of transportation. So there wasn't a lot of new stuff to build that required a lot of property acquisition. But the Gordie Howe has obviously been a big one with, hundreds and hundreds of parcels. And I've been amazed at watching, your staff and Mohammed, and when they talk to people, like you said, oftentimes they're relieved and actually, happy to find out what they're going to get, in terms of relocation and what they're going to get for their property. To the extent where, I find sometimes they're like comforting Mohammed, like, oh, it's okay, Mohammed, we'll be okay, So I'm talking about the satisfaction that you get out of, feeling like you took care of people.
Oh yeah, definitely. What you said reminds me. I had an acquisition that I did probably more than 10 years ago, but it was a very difficult acquisition. There was the property owner had a son that had disabilities and it was a very long process. And at the end, I mean, like, hey, can I give you a hug? This was great. I really appreciate it. So there is that satisfaction of seeing someone that, in the beginning, they're, upset and they're not sure about what's going to happen and they don't know what, where they're going to live. I mean, you really have to put yourself in their shoes especially if you're taking someone's house. This is where they grew up. This is where they raised their family, and, understanding their concerns and working with them and trying to treat them as fairly as possible under the regulations that you have to work within. And so seeing them usually on the other side of that situation, in a different house that they're happy with, it is very fulfilling. And a lot of times, we just have to listen, taking the time to listen to their concerns and understanding. And it's a good feeling when you've made someone happy at the end of the process. And then you've also, got the project going in the right direction in terms of having the right of way needed to build the project.
Sounds to me like you would tell somebody getting into this field, if they were to rank the top 10 traits, necessary to be successful, it probably wouldn't come to mind right away because they weren't taught this in school, whatever they went to school for, and it would be empathy.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. You have to understand, yes, you're there to do a job. You're there to secure the right of way necessary for a project. But, a lot of times I'll tell when we're doing this real estate 101, and a lot of times we're making presentations to project managers or engineers, I understand the lines on the paper, but, we also have to understand these are people we're dealing with, and they're not always on our timeline. They may be going through, health issues or divorce or death in their family. And so they're not always, going to respond in the manner or the timelines that we want them to. So just understanding that and working with that and trying to balance that with the needs of the project and making the letting schedule is something that, all of our real estate staff do, and they do a really great job of that.
So talk about the process, how it's gone for the most part. There's obviously been some ups and downs, but overall it's been successful and rewarding acquiring the land for the Gordie Howe.
Yeah, looking back, so I think there was somewhere of north of 600 parcels, and that is definitely the biggest project MDOT has ever had, at least in my career, I think in all of MDOT. And it was really unique because there was such a difference of properties. There was, commercial property, industrial property, residential property. There was some vacant property that was owned by the city of Detroit and the Michigan Land Bank. And so, obviously, in the many years that we've gone through and worked on the acquisition, we're down to just a very few that are still in the eminent domain process. But, all of the residential property owners have been successfully relocated. And so we're doing well on that.
Well, that's great. It's been interesting and rewarding to watch how it's worked. And I know you and other people who worked on this will take great pride in a couple of years when the bridge opens, and that you played a part in that.
Absolutely. I am looking forward to that day when we can see that bridge open. Yes.
Well, thank you, Teresa. This has been interesting. I appreciate you taking time to talk about it. I think it peels back the cover on some of what goes on in this process, and hopefully it's helpful to people to understand.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed being here.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Have you ever ridden with someone who turns down the music when they're driving through an unfamiliar situation? What do you do to make sure you're alert when approaching a work zone? Everyone should slow down, pause your conversation, and follow posted traffic signs. Do whatever it takes to avoid distraction. Keep Michigan work zones safe for construction crews and your passengers.
So welcome back. And now I'm with Mohammed El Gharabi, the Senior Project Manager for the Gordie Howe International Bridge. And he's a veteran of MDOT projects and has been involved in lots of discussions with residents and property owners over the years for various projects. But I wanted to talk to him mostly about what he's doing right now or has done with the Gordie Howe International Bridge. And I've joked in the past that when Mohammed deals with the property owners, a lot of times with such empathy and such compassion that they end up comforting him. So Mohammed, talk about why it's so important to establish the relationships and just, treat people with respect and kindness in this process.
Thank you, Jeff. And yes, I believe it is vital. It's natural. I really don't do this as tell myself, well, I have to be compassionate. The compassion and the kindness and treating people like you want to be treated, it's natural. I mean, when you work in a community and it's not your neighborhood, it's not your backyard, you really have to be so respectful and put yourself in their shoe. How would you feel if that was you and you have a government employee coming to you, knock on your door and say, I want to help you. I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. So you really want to give them that comfort that, look, I'm not just, yes, I am a government employee. Yes, I'm a public servant, but above all that, I am someone who cares about you, and I will be there, God willing, to walk you or see through what we're talking about. And I think, Jeff, that's probably the best thing that ever happened to me in particular. I consider myself very fortunate. It's not I came 20 years ago, 18 years ago, and I said I will do A, B, and C, and then I disappeared, and they have to deal with somebody else. I was there, and I am there, and I will be there, God willing. So that, I think, in my mind, helped quite a bit, that it's the same face, and they don't have to go and engage someone new.
I just have learned so much in this process as we worked on the Gordie Howe in the earliest days, before it was even the Gordie Howe. It had a series of names, but when things got serious and the land acquisition began, watching not just the real estate services section people, but you, even though you're not in real estate as a project manager, so much of what you have to do is gain that trust and establish those relationships with people in the neighborhood. So, talk about more specifically about that and what you've done to get us to where we are with that project.
I think, again, we like any other project, or like any project you get involved with, there will be issues. And Jeff, I'm thinking of Clark was a great example. This is as of recent, so I'm not going back several years. I'm going back several months, maybe. There were issues. Closing Clark Street was not an easy thing, and basically created some issues with, for example, coordinating with the company that does actually the garbage pickup, making sure that if you God forbid, you hit a water main, and now you have to have water shut off. What do you do? And what is that going to impact the community? When you close a road that trucks usually uses, and now all of a sudden the trucks cannot go because it's supposed to be closed, but they go ahead and use it anyway, and you have kids in the neighborhood, and the kids now the moms and dads are worried about their kids with trucks getting lost. That is a lot for the community to deal with. So talking to the community leaders and being able to give them the time to express themselves, tell you about what's going on, but also working with the contractor and remind them that this is really their livelihood. This is not just, you're checking the box and saying, oh, okay, we'll make sure the trash gets picked up. No, this is vital. It cannot wait 2 days, because we all know we want our trash picked up the day that it's supposed to be picked up. So again, you really have to follow up, talk to them. As you remember, we had almost like a town hall where we were able to listen to their concerns and take those concerns with the contractor. For example, ensuring that the dust is being taken care of. If you remember, that was a hot summer and it was dry, and things were getting very dusty, and the air was not clear and was not clean. So we wanted to ensure that all get taken care of. And really the proof was in the pudding when we had a second and third town halls. By the time we did the third one, it was so awesome to know that most people were like, yeah, I think it's being taken care of. And so follow up, keep your word, be honest, be real. That's really, these are all the characteristics that you have to follow.
Well, something that Teresa talked about was that people are obviously nervous, fear the worst. They're familiar with ominous terms like eminent domain and condemnation. And then often they end up being relieved or even happy when they find out what their compensation will be and relocation costs. And that's been the case. I mean, not always, but often with the Gordie Howe footprint, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and again, the proof was in the pudding. I think when we first started and they start hearing about what we're going to do, they were concerned, they were scared, they were frightened. But I think as time went by and people start experiencing working with people that are kind, people that are caring, compassionate, They're not just someone that you don't even know who they are. They make their face, obviously available. Like, in other words, come to meet with the individual, meet one-on-one with the property owner, and try to listen to their needs and address their needs. All of that goes into the trust factor. We never get anybody to trust us until they feel they get the reason for them to trust us. So we've earned their trust, and when we've earned their trust, especially with the community leaders, that really goes a long way, because then the community leaders can go to their residents, to their neighborhood, and tell them about us, that there's nothing to worry about, because MDOT stands by their words. And MDOT has got a great reputation, and here's why. So it's not just declaration without proof, but it's really the proof is in the pudding.
Well, so, you learned this over the years. This isn't anything that, they taught you in engineering school. What would you advise someone who's going to get into like the kind of level of project management or into real estate acquisition for a DOT or really any government agency? What would you tell them? Like, what's the number one characteristic you say that you would need to either have, or a skill you need to develop?
Jeff, I promise you, as you know me by now, I'm not buttering you up by saying what I'm about to say. But are you ready? The bottom line is there's only one thing you need to remember: communication. It's all about communication. Yesterday, I was at the public meeting, our quarterly public meeting in Detroit, and I was talking to another fellow contractor, actually, one of the people that I work with on a regular basis. And we were talking about, the lessons learned and how do we get better about what we're doing. And we both came to the same conclusion. Communication is the number one ingredients for success. If you want to be successful, right now we're talking transportation, but I believe in any field is communication. You cannot do anything, because we all know it sounds like a cliche, or it sounds like something so intuitive that why even mention it? But if you don't communicate and communicate effectively and over communicate, then you're really missing out big time. So if we need to communicate, and the community really demands that, in a special way, meaning don't give me the silence treatment. Don't do things in my neighborhood and walk away and not tell me what you're doing. If you remember, Jeff, about the water shut off, all they wanted is, okay, so you hit a water main. Tell me about it. You don't just go on trying to fix it, and in your mind, it's all good because I'm trying to fix it, but you failed to really tell me and notify me immediately. So to me, communication is the only tool in the toolbox. What I'm saying is, if you miss that, I don't know what other tools you're going to look for. They're not going to be as effective.
No, I think that applies to so many things, whether you're on the freeway and traffic is stopped and you don't know why. You just want to know. You want, if the dynamic message signs are available, if there's another way now with information through Google or Waze, map piped right into your vehicle through your own nav system. You just want to know what's going on. Is it a crash? Is it construction? Is it something else? Or if you're sitting on the tarmac, and the plane isn't doing anything, and nobody's, talking to you, from the cockpit to say, hey, here's why we're waiting. Most people just want to know, and they'll be understanding if you tell them what's going on. So I get what you're saying, but trust me, I don't feel like you're buttering me up just because, my job is in, communications in kind of the official sense and media relations. I think you're right. It's so important, and it's not something that is taught enough in schools. And the people who are going to succeed in doing what you do, it's not going to be because of their skills with math or their skills at mapping out projects. It's going to be because of that ability to communicate and talk and connect with people. So yeah, well said on your part. So what else as we look forward, I guess, with the Gordie Howe, the land acquisition is largely done. Just, take a minute just to talk about how things are going and how excited you are about, being down there for an opening in a couple of years.
Well, I encourage all your listeners to please, if you have not gone to the Gordie Howe Bridge website, please do. There are so many videos, photos, renderings that are posted on a regular basis. I think just in the last couple of days, there has been a new video done by a drone that is just phenomenal. Well, the tower is right now, the towers, I should say, both towers on the U.S. and in Detroit and in Windsor are reaching between 500 and 550 feet high. And that is a huge significance milestone. Not only that, but also because we're using the unbalanced cantilever method, so we're doing a lot of the backspan, and we're supporting it by columns, false work, to support it until we start stringing the stays. But by the end of the year, God willing, fingers crossed, we're going to start working in the water, like across the Detroit River. So to achieve that milestone and start building the deck, that is a huge milestone. But not only that, when we're talking about the U.S. port of entry, Jeff, we have 5 buildings, and each of those customs an inspection buildings, whether it's a Fish and Wildlife building or Department of Ag or you name it, or secondary or the main building, all 5 are in different stages, but they are all moving in the right direction and getting done. Wildbridge is doing a great job. The progress is tremendous. And on the Michigan interchange, I think we finished 4 out of the 5 bridges, and we're continuing to get all of them done. But not only that, but we're working also on the ramp bridges. Those are the main ramps that connects I-75 into the port of entry. And those are very long and very significant, and they're all getting built as we speak. So as you look around in the project, whether it's a USPOE main bridge or the Michigan interchange, tremendous progress. And I give a lot of credit to all the entire team that is working on the project, because, the work is tremendous.
Well, and I should point out, when you talked about, working in the river to do the deck, that there won't be any piers or supports actually in the river when this is all done. That was part of an agreement early on, that the bridge would span the river without disrupting navigation of river traffic or the environment. So that's a good thing.
Absolutely. That is exactly correct. Most people, they say, well, you're going to be in the water while you're constructing the main span. And we're like, no, we're not. We're going to do it all from top. So there isn't any disruption to the navigable waterway. And that's the way Coast Guard wanted it. And that's the way we're doing it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mohammed. It's good to catch up on this. It's been a while since we had you on to talk about it. And obviously we'll have some more updates as the project goes on, but I especially wanted to talk about this in the context of real estate acquisition, so this was very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you again for listening to this week's edition of the Talking Michigan Transportation Podcast. I also want to thank Randy Devler for his work producing this week's podcast, Jesse Ball, MDOT social media coordinator, who proofreads the show notes and helps with all kinds of things related to getting this done every week, and Courtney Bates, who does a great job putting the podcast together in a format so it can be posted, and Sarah Canugs Connect in our office, who also helps with the production and the transcription of the podcast.